is the prison industrial complex. So, exactly what is the prison industrial complex? Tyrone Bowman live. Let's talk about it. According to the Justice Education Department, the article was written by Myra Porter. The prison industrial complex is what the title suggests, a complex issue. Read a broken down explanation of the PIC and an overview of its effects. In the United States, it is clear that there are many injustices within our criminal justice system. The prison industrial complex, or PIC, is one of the main systems in our country that perpetuates these injustices. According to Critical Resistance, an international movement aiming to bring an end to the PIC. Quote, the prison industrial complex is a term we use to describe the overlapping interests of government and industry that use surveillance, policing, and imprisonment as solutions to economic, social, and political problems, end quote. The PIC, not just the prisons themselves or incarceration, is an interlocking web of many different systems that assure the powerful will stay in power. Some of these systems include prisons, the bail system, the police, courts, and more. Mass media helps to depict a large variety of oppressed peoples, people of color, poor people, LGBTQ plus people, immigrants, youth, as criminals or people who need to be stopped. Private prison companies making huge profits for incarcerating people, and politicians garner support for being, quote, tough on crime, end quote. All of these people and companies profit greatly from incarcerating, transporting, feeding, and exploiting prisoners. So, issue number one, private prisons. Private prisons are a large component of the PIC, or the prison industrial complex, and possibly the most problematic. Essentially, private prisons hold inmates according to contracts with the government and receive profits based on how many inmates they can hold and for the average length of inmate sentences. Private prisons make more profit with more inmates, so instead of working with the goal of rehabilitating people and returning them to society, they work with the goal of keeping as many inmates incarcerated for as long as possible. This then contributes to the cycle of over-policing and longer sentences. Incentivized by the need to keep jail cells full and the pocket of company executives even fuller. Let me just say this. Do you know high-profile athletes and people invest in prison privatization? It costs on the average about anywhere from 40 to 50 plus $1,000 per year to house a prisoner. And then when other prisons don't have enough people, you know what the prison system does? It takes prisoners or inmates, whatever you want to call them, guests, and sends them to the state where people don't have enough prisoners so they can meet their yearly budget. Basically, this is nothing but flesh for sale. Now, as I said in a couple of videos, prison does serve a purpose. You know, people just can't do what they want to do and think it's okay. You know, some people deserve to be locked up, some don't. But I'm sticking with the issue. Private prisons make more profit with more inmates, so instead of working with the goal of rehabilitating them, they keep them locked up. That's the bottom line. Listen, the incentive by the need to keep jails full and the pockets of company executives even fuller, privatized prisons thrive off of the masses of incarceration of individuals, both guilty and innocent. And Cynthia Ewell, a writer for the Equal Justice Law under law, nonprofit, in an article discussing how companies are exploiting the incarceration of individuals in order to increase profits. When the role of the government is handed over to private prisons, it is no longer about helping the people in prison. It is about profits and gain. Safety precautions have been overlooked. Guards are not properly trained, and the bail system has been privatized. The PIC is a vicious cycle of mistreatment, injustice, and profit. As stated by Angela Davis, mass imprisonment generates profits as it endeavors or devours social wealth, and thus it tends to reproduce the very conditions that lead people to prison. Quote, close quote. Let me ask you a question. Do you know people in your family who have gone to prison and he tried to make bail and the bail was so high? And that's done on purpose. You know why it's done on purpose? The judge is instructed to make the bail high so that the person can stay in the county jail as long as they possibly can, pending going to trial or enter into a plea agreement so the county jail can make money. That's why the bail is so high, for no other reason. Yet when the rich and the famous and the powerful get called on the carpet, notice they automatically get released. Sometimes on their own recognizance, no bail at all. But everyday people, they got to call mom, dad, uncle, aunt, friend, foe. You got to find ways to try to raise money so they can be out on bail so they can fight the case. The private prison system not only profits off of locking people up, but also are not even required to disclose how they spend their money, have very little oversight, and are often filled with inhumane treatment and prison labor. Issue number 2, prison labor. Prison labor has been around ever since slavery was supposedly abolished, with the 13th Amendment being added to the Constitution in 1865. Before and during the Civil War, the U.S. economy became dependent on slave labor, especially in agriculture areas in the South. Once enslaved men and women were freed, the South no longer had an unlimited labor pool, which led to an economic downturn. When the 13th Amendment was added to the Constitution, it stated that slave labor was illegal, except as punishment for a crime. The loophole, paired with the economic depression in southern states, led to the creation of black codes, mass incarceration, and prison labor. Black codes were laws that specifically targeted people of color in order to criminalize and incarcerate them, meaning black people. These people were then forced to do slave labor while in prison. Because of that loophole in the 13th Amendment, prisons are allowed to force the inmates to do hard manual labor with little to no pay for large corporations. Even today in our country, prison labor contributes to a large part of our economy. You don't think it's real? Go to prison to find out. You think it's a joke? Listen, y'all, bluntly put, the prisons could not work and would not survive if all prisoners said they're not going to do any work. They could shut it all down. What are you going to do? Lock them up in the cell? You know who would have to do the work? The prison employees would have to do all the work. Prison labor. Prisons make furniture. Prisons make license plates. They make all kinds of stuff for society. And major corporations, they profit greatly. What do you think commissary is about? Commissary is a private contract with major companies who have contracted with the government to sell foods at 3, 4, and 10 times the normal price in prison. Privatization, private programs, private corporations. When Ed Rendell was mayor of Philadelphia and district attorney of Philadelphia, he was involved in the commissary business, in privatization. It's a stipulated fact, Jack. Anybody who's a billionaire, most billionaires invest in geo. I'll talk about them in a separate video. Most of them involve politicians invest in private prisons because they make a ton of money. And you know who the commodity are? The prisoners, the inmates, the slaves. In a segment of NPR, host Darius Rafian describes how many large companies take advantage of prison labor. Quote, companies like Walmart, AT&T, Whole Foods, Victoria's Secret have all relied on the labor of incarcerated people, and right now there are people in prisons all over the country working for little to no money, making hand sanitizer and face masks to help fight COVID-19, end quote. Let me tell you something that a prisoner invented. It's a true story. You know the handcuffs that the guards and the cops use in prisons, and they clamp it down. They have the hand like this, then they clamp it down with a box on top of it. Guess who invented that? A prisoner invented it. He had nothing to do with his time but to sit in the cell and come up with a contraction to make life more miserable for his fellow brothers in prison. And he told the warden about it. They sat down with this idiot, said, you know what? We're going to help you to take care of yourself. We're going to offer you $5,000 up front. And we're going to put that on your books for you for helping us. He took the money. I said he took the money. The invention was copyrighted. The invention was patented. Mass production went into place. And those clamps are real, whether people believe it or not. Some of y'all, you're quick to sit back and judge and condemn and eviscerate people who go to prison. And half the time, y'all don't even know what you're talking about. They put the money on his books, but he never got to spend it. And that's the end of that story. Later in the same segment, another host explains that it's difficult to know exactly how large the prison labor industry is, because the last nationwide census of prisons was conducted in 2005. The host said that in 2005, quote, it was estimated that there were nearly 1.5 million incarcerated people working, and that included 600,000 people in the manufacturing sector. Oh, another thing that privatization does. Who do you think does the laundry? Major corporations partner with the prisons. And they vie for the contracts. And whoever comes up with a bid that's reasonable, then the secretary of the department of the DLC, that's the dude that's in charge, they make the deal. Everything in prison costs money. Those phone calls that you all keep paying for, when people call home, or you have to put money on their books. Come on, don't act like y'all don't know people that are in jail. Don't play with me here. Y'all know people that are in prison. People in your family is in prison. Some of your relatives have been to prison, and some of them are still locked up. Some of your children are locked up. They write home all the time asking for money for commissary, or they call continuously around the clock, telling you they need money for this, they need money for that, and the other thing. This is real. And the phone calls, you can barely hear the person talk because they keep interrupting the conversation when the person's trying to talk to you, and they got a nerve to charge you $200 and $300 for 15 minutes. Big business. Pharmaceutical industry makes big money from prisons. Electricians make big money. Carpenters make big money. Contractors make big money. Up in Pennsylvania, Phoenixville, was built for the cost of $600 million. A woman's side and a man's side with a waterfall that comes in between them. And now prisons are built to the point that it looks like a corporate headquarters on the outside, and you don't even know it's a prison anymore. So what is the bottom line? Emily Cage's collective, an organization dedicated to sharing information about prison industrial complex and prison abolitions, asserts that, quote, the prison industrial complex has effectively created a whole new industry to make the rich richer and profit from the caging of human beings, end quote. And when people come home, they either put an ankle monitor on them, which you got to pay for in the monitoring service, or they put them in a halfway house. When you go to the halfway house, do you know they got to pay to stay at halfway house? And the parole officer wants a cut of their money. And you got to pay the house manager money. They want you to get out and get a job. You've been down for 10 to 20 years. You don't have the skills necessary. So you go out and get the first job that you can find. And you can't move out the halfway house until you have an approved home plan or an approved plan for an apartment. And I always tell people, especially on my prison channel, take whatever job you can get for the time being. Go to school, get paid, better yourself. Don't let these people try to minimize the importance of your life. Half of the people who work in Washington have been to prison, and many more yet to go. So hold your head up. Don't let people berate you, talk about you, put you down, and call you every time a name under the sun. Because many of them are going to end up in prison before it's all over with. Just keep talking about folk. And in closing this video, the bottom line is the prison industrial complex exploits incarcerated people on a daily basis. Private prisons not only make a profit just from holding incarcerated people, but can also force those to partake in prison labor due to a loophole in the 13th Amendment. So what happens when they don't want to? They just lock them in the cell, put them in the hole, try to threaten and intimidate them. And a lot of people don't work prison jobs. They refuse to. So our criminal justice system is riddled with injustice, but the PIC creates and upholds one of the most inhumane and unjust systems. So for more information, you can do just like I did. Go to the Justice Education Project. Look it up. Never surrender. Never quit.